Here. The purpose of this meeting is for a public hearing to consider a tax increment financing, otherwise known as TIF, for the Sycamore Ridge Housing Project. Staff report.
Yes, Commissioners. So the Sycamore Ridge Residential Subdivision is a single-family residential project proposed at the corner of Burnett and Leffel Lane. This would be the northwest corner, about 70 acres. The property has been annexed at this point, and the developer has worked through the design and engineering of the public infrastructure. This would be for a 258 single-family residential subdivision constructed inside the city. And one of the items that the developer has requested is for a TIF or tax increment financing to be put into place for this development. How the TIF would work is the TIF is a mechanism to generate funds to help offset the cost of public infrastructure improvements, so roadways, utilities, stormwater, other public utilities, even gas. The private utilities of gas and electric fall under the TIF provisions. And so what this would propose is a 30-year 100% TIF for the development. How that works is in the first 10 years of the TIF fund would receive 75% of the increased value. So the base value of that land as it sits today stays the same, and the jurisdictions that receive those funds receive them exactly the same as they would today. But in the first 10 years, the TIF fund would receive 75% of the increased valuation, and the school district, being Clark Shawnee, would receive 25% of the increased value, so of the new funds of that development that's generated in property taxes. After year 10, the schools are made 100% full, so they would receive the 100% benefit of the increased valuation. And then the remaining jurisdictions, as it relates to property tax, that would continue for another 20 years. This is very similar to what we put in place for the Bridgewater subdivision, which is out on the east side of town. There is a little bit of a difference, though, because we understand and recognize the impact that it could have financially on the schools and the township. So the city worked with our council and were able to find a program called a New Community Authority, or NCA, to put in place on this property. That NCA places an additional 4 mills of property tax on just that development that would generate 2 mills for the school districts and 2 mills for the township during the first 10 years. Then after those first 10 years, when the schools are made whole at 100%, 2 mills would continue to go to the township, and then 2 mills would come to us as the city in that property tax under that NCA. So again, as an opportunity to generate and offset some of the revenue loss from the TIF itself, the city has put or is proposing to put that NCA or New Community Authority in place. That is the difference between what this TIF arrangement looks like as opposed to the Bridgewater.
Audience want to speak to this? Their motion to adjourn the hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved, seconded. Clerk.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estrom,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes. The hearing scheduled for 6:55 is called to order. The roll call from the previous will cover also. The purpose of this meeting is for a public hearing to consider a right-of-way vacation. Has proper legal notice been given the public hearing? What? Has public notice been given of the hearing?
Notice was published in the Springfield News and Sun and newspaper of general circulation within the city, advertising the City Commission's consideration of vacating the first alley north West Mulberry Street from South Center Street east to South Fountain Avenue. Attached hereto are true and correct copies of the notices of public hearing published on March 18th and 25th, 2022.
I move that the communication be ordered received, recorded in the minutes, and filed.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Staff report.
Applicant needs vacated alley space to provide for an access to the Yoast parking lot. Return reports from utility company state no objections and recommend approval. Columbia Gas and Spectrum require access easement rights as there are facilities present within subject alley. Columbia Gas has provided a map showing where the facilities are within the alley. Return reports from staff state no objection and recommend approval. There were no objections at the planning board meeting and no objections received by staff. The request was approved unanimously and staff is recommending approval of the request. Thank you.
Should have questions or comments?
Just my usual question. Have you received any objections after all the actions were taken?
No.
Thank you.
Else? Anyone in the audience want to speak to this matter? Is there a motion to adjourn the hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Phillips? Dr. Estra?
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. The 2 minute, minute and a half.
Mhm.
We try to start at the time that was set so that if anybody wanted to be here, they'd get here. So we got another minute. Meeting of the City Commission is called to order. Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Here?
Mr. O'Neill?
Here.
Ms. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Rue?
Here.
Mr. Copeland?
Here, please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Our God, we're grateful for the opportunity to meet this evening, and we hope to use this time for the service of our community. Our thoughts are also on those who are currently in conflict in Europe. We hope that they are able to work out their differences and people quit being killed as they have been in recent. In your name we pray. Amen. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? I can hear it really well. Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Clerk will proceed with the reading of first readings by title only.
Vacating the first alley north of West Mulberry Street from South Center Street east of South Fountain Avenue. Confirming and approving Amendment Number 1 to the CARES Act Revolving Loan Fund, EDA Revolving Loan Fund Subrecipient Funding Agreement between the City and SBDC Incorporated to increase the agreement in an amount not to exceed $18,750 for a total agreement amount not to exceed $825,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a purchase agreement with KK Tool Company for the sale of certain real property located at 223-225 South Wittenberg Avenue and 218-220 West Jefferson Street. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for demolition services with Tony Smith doing business as Tony Smith Wrecking and Trucking for an amount not to exceed $400,000. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for demolition services with Steve Roush Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $400,000. Authorizing the purchase of one 2023 MV 607 SBA Broom Bear single-engine street sweeper with dual side brooms from Jack Denny for an amount not to exceed $317,954.60 plus trade-in credit of $20,000 for a net purchase amount not to exceed $297,954.60 through Sourcewell pursuant to the Sourcewell Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners on first reading? Mr. Estrop?
Thank you. Wondering on item 219-20, increasing the amount for the small business. If you could tell us a little more about that, and in fact, talk about the Small Business Council in general.
Yeah, I actually have Tom Franzen, our Assistant City Manager and Director of Economic Development, address.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. So this ordinance is related to the CARES Act RLF funding that we received, $825,000 grant from the EDA in the midst of pandemic to increase aid to small businesses. And so the grant included a $75,000 portion that could be used for administrative expenses. As that budget was submitted to the EDA, there was a small portion at $18,750 that the city reserved for our administrative expenses. After talking to the finance department, it was reviewed that we weren't going to utilize that, so we're passing that on to the SBDC to cover their expenses.
What will they use it for, Tom?
So this will cover the administrative expenses for the loan officer himself.
And this is the organization that helps small businesses get off the ground and learn how to operate efficiently and effectively.
That's correct. Yeah, the Small Business Development Center is funded by the city. They operate our loan funds, but they also have 2 full-time personnel that help with business counseling. And they also run a new program called the Community Navigator Program with some new funding they have. But yes, they help small businesses with a whole host of issues or challenges they might have, whether that be marketing, finance, sales. They can help them really with a whole host of things. So if you're thinking about starting a business, certainly it's the best place to kind of start, I think, to ask some of those early questions, as well as services for existing businesses that might be facing different kinds of challenges. So it's a great resource that we have in the community, and we're certainly happy to partner with.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else on a first reading? Clerk will proceed with second reading.
Vacating the first alley southeast of East Street from Selma Road northeast approximately 150 feet.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Accepting the application for annexation of certain territory containing 247.17 acres, more or less, in Springfield Township and commonly known as the 4025 East National Road Annexation Area to the city of Springfield, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
And Mr. Mayor, I'd like Mr. Heck to explain to us a little bit about the annexation process. I know that I think all of us have received emails or comments from concerned citizens around that surrounding area. And so when a private property comes to the city and requests annexation, at that point, what are we required or how do we?
Yeah, so Ohio Revised Code sets up the ability for property owners to annex properties into various governmental subdivisions or political subdivisions. And so just that, it allows a private property owner to make that decision based off of development, access to utilities, so forth. And so in this particular case, the applicant applied for an annexation actually under our CETA agreement. So specifically with the city of Springfield, Springfield Township, and Clark County. Back in the late 90s, a cooperative economic development agreement was put into place that was geared or directed towards annexations and how to partner and cooperate together on annexations as we look to grow our community as Clark County as a whole. And so under the CETA, it's actually allows for them to submit what is a type 2 annexation, which is an expedited annexation process. Goes to the county first for approval and then comes to the city. And really what we're looking at in an annexation is, one, can we serve the territory requested for annexation? So public safety, utilities, et cetera. Those things are the utilities, public safety. Those are areas that we currently serve as Next Edge is out there and is part of the city. And there's other properties throughout 40 that are already a part of the city that we service and serve. And then we look at more basic things of the request is contiguous to the city. The map that was submitted is correct, those types of things. So when all those measures are met, the city looks favorably upon an annexation as, again, requested by a private property owner.
I too, like all my fellow commissioners, received information about this issue. Some of it specifically addressed the issue of schooling. I happen to have a little background in that, having served as superintendent for Springfield City. So I think we need to correct some information. Some of the fastest growing school districts in this state are also some of the most wealthy. Look no farther than New Albany, Upper Arlington, Dublin. Those districts are very wealthy schools because you see 100% of the taxpayers pay real estate tax, but not all of the taxpayers have children. In fact, in the city of Springfield, only 20% of the households had children, but the 80% of the rest of the taxpayers still pay their real estate tax. So everybody pays, but not everybody has children taking advantage of those services. So I don't see this as a losing proposition. There is school district after school district in this state that has significantly benefited from growth. And they are some of the best, highest performing school districts in the state of Ohio. And so I will vote yes on this because I think over the long run, this will benefit our community and ultimately benefit the Clark County School District. Thank you.
Else from commission? Okay, I've got 4 cards that I believe are on this topic. Those of you who turned in cards, you might want to go to one of the speakers so we won't have to wait for you to get there later. The first one, and I apologize if I don't pronounce your name properly, Katie Ryan Schilke. Go ahead. Please try to limit your comments to a couple minutes.
I'm Katie Ryan Schilke. I grew up in Springfield Township. I went away to college and quickly moved right back where I purchased a home and also property in Springfield Township on Tuttle Road. With all due respect, Mr. Shop, Springfield City Schools is a little different than Clark County Local School District. We don't quite have the number of students, the number of actual schools, or the number of taxpayers that the city schools have. We are also not New Albany, not Dublin, and not Upper Arlington. We do not have the wealth that they have, and we're not that area. I don't know why you would like compare Springfield to those locations because they're just not the same. As far as you saying 100% of taxpayers pay real estate tax to the school, they don't because, for example, the development behind Walmart has a TIF where they don't have to pay, well, they pay, but the developer got the money, I believe. So the school district will see none of that money for 10 years, and the township will see none of that money for 30 years, but the township is still responsible for snow removal, brush removal, and servicing all of those roads, and the school district is still responsible for finding space for those students, which frankly we don't have. We're already at capacity, and we just built new schools for what we have. We're not prepared for 2,500 new homes built within just a matter of years. Beyond our school district just not having like the capacity for that, there's congestion that's going to happen by having potentially 1,200 new homes on 40, with the additional 800 or so homes behind Walmart, however many there are. And I know that the township has also addressed the Tuttle and 40 intersection and some of the other intersections and like asked for those to be updated, but that was met with really not our problem. I know that we don't get to vote for you guys because we just live in the township, but you guys get to make a decision on like a really big aspect of our lives. And even though we don't get to vote for you guys directly, we still spend our money in the city. We still know people who live in the city, and we just still have like a really big impact on this community. And I would just ask you that you're also going to think about us in the township, because maybe it does affect you a little more than you think it does. And I just want you to, consider all options and realize that maybe the township is a little different than the city, and you need to think about that a little more when you're making your decisions. Thank you.
As long as you're standing there, why don't you speak next? Tell us what your name is.
Hi, I'm Melissa Baker. I've lived across the street from the farmland off Route 40 for 49 years. My family and I, my family and I and my neighbors, we've built our lives there long before the city started annexing land and creeping ever closer. Because I and my neighbors chose to live outside the city, and because we didn't want to live in the city. But we're still neighbors to you. Many of us work in the city and have family and friends there. So I'm not knocking the city. I'm just saying that it's our choice to live away from the city and build our lives in the city. And we want you to respect that choice. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. I'm here as your neighbor to ask you to please vote no on the annexation of this beautiful open space and farmland. I'm asking you to vote no, not only because farmland and open space are quickly joining the way of the dinosaurs, but also because the development that's proposed for this land will significantly and negatively impact the lives of me and my neighbors and my family. The influx of noise, traffic, and congestion will be bad enough, but the tax implications are far worse. And I'm sorry, Mr. Estrup, but you're wrong with your idea that schools are going to get that tax money. They get 25% of that tax money. The rest of that burden, yes, because of the TIF. That's how that works. That's what's exactly going on at Bridgewater. The Clark County School District cannot accommodate the thousands of students that this development is going to bring. Clark Shawnee taxpayers are still paying for the completion of the renovation and remodel of the high school and the building of a new elementary school that just opened in the fall of 21. The numbers of the students those buildings were built based on were from a state survey that determined that the population in our community in the Clark Shawnee district was declining. So those buildings don't have room for all of these new students that are coming in from Bridgewater, that are coming in from the Burnett Road, Leffel Lane development, and now this monstrosity. We don't have the room. That means another new school is going to have to be built to accommodate these students, all on the backs of us, the current Clark Shawnee taxpayers, because of that TIF agreement. I sincerely doubt that the people who created that agreement ever thought it would be used against us in this way. In fact, I'm certain that they expected the city to behave honorably when it came to such matters. But I digress. As your neighbor, I'm asking you, please, because you have the power to stop this right now, to please vote no on the annexation. And please do what is right.
Name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Nick Mastic. I've been living in Springfield for close to 7 years now, and I'd like to speak about what I consider the failed, tired concept of annexation in suburbia as to quality of life in a city. I bought a home on the south side of Fountain, or South Fountain, and enjoying my time here in this good city. I'd like to say great city, but I think it's got issues. I read where Springfield was once a great city and one of the most prosperous cities of its size in the country. You can go to the Heritage Building and see old photographs of throngs of people shopping downtown, supporting their city. But when I used to come here and visit my kids before retiring and moving here, I thought Springfield was dead. I likened it to a stale donut with no center. The frosting on the outside was made up of old cookie cutter franchises you see everywhere, every day, no mom and pop, no charm, nothing unique, nothing to build lasting memories, no culture. And just how many of McDonald's franchises one town need? But since moving here, I have seen some changes that are positive, particularly what's happening downtown, creative, innovative ideas to not only bring revenue and attract tourists, but to create a sense of identity and belonging together. You can't have a town or a city where people want to come to and have no vibrant core. When you travel abroad in many cities, you'll see there's a plaza downtown where people gather. It's their soul, their identity. They want to be together. Young people aren't distanced and alienated by suburbia and spread out separate places. I applaud those innovators and entrepreneurs who are seeing this vision of a healthy, vibrant Springfield, of building and developing from within. Springfield needs density rather than expanding out. Expanding out leads to more strip malls, box stores, accelerated runoff from all the concrete and blacktop. It causes pollution when people dump their fast food in the parking lot. It takes away farmland. It removes woodlands, which help clean our air and destroys necessary wildlife. I say an emphatic no to annexation and yes to building and developing Springfield from within. Thank you.
Yes, Casey Lee. I live at 363 Titus Road in Springfield, Ohio. And I'd like to address the commission and the developers that are here for the annexation into the city. My wife and I and our family moved out to Titus Road about 22 years ago. The reason for us moving out there was we wanted to move out into the township and the county just to kind of get away from all the hustle and bustle of the city. I know that years change and so do generations. And I spoke to several of you. Rob, I know I talked with you on the phone this week. I know I talked with Brian and I talked with Tom Franzen about this whole issue. And I really have mixed emotions about it. A couple things. Number one, Dr. Eastrop, I understand what you're talking about with the schools, but I know I have two daughters. One just graduated in 2020, and one will be graduating from Shawnee this year. And going through the Shawnee process, Shawnee's school is an excellent school district. I know they work really hard to get their students scholarships to colleges and things. And I know they've done a lot of stuff to improve the campuses that they're at. But as my previous speakers that came up earlier, they have reached out and they've done some improvements, and they've added a new school building. And yet we're getting ready to tear down Possum's already tore down, and also Reed is going to be next. And I think that the impact that this is going to have on the school immediately is going to be absolutely overwhelming for the school district. I do know that the citizens of the Springfield Township, I know we pay a very high property tax for the city for our residences. And I know that we're just going to continue to pay our taxes as good citizens, but also understand that, listening to tonight, some of the information that was told earlier about the TIFs, when I moved out to Springfield Township, I didn't have any 20-year or 25-year, leniency on paying my school taxes or anything like that. And I just think that's, it's nice to entice people to come to the Springfield area to have that done, but at the same time, it's not fair to some of the residents that have lived there all their lives. The other thing is I do live on Titus Road. I know with Prime Ohio and with Silifex that's out there now, we see an extreme amount of traffic that has increased over the years. I know that with another addition behind where I live and the access to Titus Road, the only thing I can see you guys doing is wanting to access, Titus Road and make everybody that's on Titus Road on the west side of Titus to be annexed into the city. And I certainly do not want to be annexed into the city. That's the reason why I moved out there, was because I wanted to be away from the city. I love Springfield. I'm born and raised here all my life. My father and my Uncle Bill were both fire chiefs here in the city of Springfield. And I love Springfield, and I will always love Springfield. It's home. But I think there's a lot of people that live in this area that are very concerned about where we are going with this. And to be honest, a few years ago we talked about, the development of the downtown. We're starting to see some very big progress with the townhouses down here by Mother Stewart's. It's awesome. But it seems like we've automatically taken our eye off that focus of the downtown. Now we're going to move to the east. Now we're going to move to the west. And it's like, we gotta focus on where we want to go. And I think that the city, the downtown area was a big focus for several years. We have a great celebration at Christmas with Christmas in the city or Holiday in the City. This is what Springfield's all about. And I just feel like truly there's got to be some way of coming up with an idea of other areas of the city to be able to develop this major housing development. And I hope that you guys will take that into consideration. I know that there's a lot of wildlife out there, and I do know that some of the farmers that are farming out there, they're going to lose that farmland. And I know that certainly it's not the kind of money that the Chamber of Commerce is going to make from renting it out to a farmer, but it's let's look at it. What's the right thing to do? What is the right thing to do? We're talking about green
Could
environment.
you wrap up, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you wrap up?
I will. But we're talking about the green environment. This is a perfect example of this. So I ask that you all consider this, and we hope that you will make that right decision. And if not, just table it for several years, because it's something that I think it's going to cause a lot of issues down the road. Thank you.
Name and address for the record, please.
So my name is Sarah Baker. I went to Shawnee. I've lived in this community as well for almost 25 years. City Commissioners, I would like to read an excerpt delivered by a world-renowned architect.
Try to
Rem-
speak into the
oh.
microphone a little bit better.
Yeah, sorry, is this
No
better?
problem.
But I would like to read to you an excerpt from a speech delivered by a world-renowned architect and educator named Rem Koolhaas, that was delivered at Columbia University in 2004. The speech discusses the history of preservation and addresses modern tendencies towards developing urban and rural environments. So during that talk, Koolhaas said, quote, "I've always been appalled that abstinence is the one part of the architectural repertoire that is never considered. Perhaps in architecture, a profession that fundamentally is supposed to change things that it encounters, usually before reflection, there ought to be an equally important arm of it which is considered and concerned with not doing anything. The first law of preservation ever defined was in 1790, just a few years before the French Revolution. That is already an interesting idea that at that moment in France, when the past was basically being prepared for the rubbish dump, the issue of preserving monuments was raised for the first time. Another equally important moment was in 1877, where, in Victorian England, in the most intense moment of civilization, there was a second preservation condition. If you look at inventions that were taking place between those two moments, cement, the spinning frame, the stethoscope, anesthesia, photography, the blueprint, etc., you slowly realize that preservation is not the enemy of modernity, but actually one of its inventions. That makes perfect sense, because clearly the whole idea of modernization raises either latently or overtly the issue of what to keep. As a resident who lives directly across from the Melody Drive-In, I ask that you do not approve this annexation of farmland. The loss of that farmland and open space that our county has already endured is a grave problem, and that this development will only further exacerbate that. Furthermore, I do believe that the question of whether this development should proceed as planned is a moral one. I do not believe that this is the best or most responsible use of this land. Please vote no. Please vote no on this annexation and direct this developer to current city property that really does need attention and needs redevelopment. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak to this matter? Go to the microphone, please.
Thank you, Mayor Copeland and council members, and I appreciate this, and thank you for your opportunity for us to share our ideas and accept our feedback. I only have basically one question. Everything else.
Could you state your name, please?
Mark Williams. for
Thank
the
you.
record. I live on the east side, across from the Melody Drive-In. I just have one question. I don't know how what happened to it, but at a point in time, in around 2008, there was a plan that was drawn up that if you go to the Springfield Township zoning website, you can see where there's sections that talk about the Eastern Edge Corridor Plan in 3 different parts, and then below that is a tab to click on the map that came up, which is an overlay of, it showed basically from Spring Street to New Love Road, a plan for land use, which would address what we were here tonight about. It laid out a chart which would help set criteria for different uses for various parts of the map. And I have a visual aid, you probably can't see it, but this is on the website, is basically a draft from December of 2007. If things have changed since then, or if they don't have the original copy, maybe the township needs to update their website. But in that map, it shows in the bottom, in the area that we're talking about between Bird Road and Titus, that whole area in there, with the little box that shows where the Melody Drive-In is. In the legend, the description for that particular land use was mixed use for R&D, research and development, commercial, and conservation ed. I'm not sure when the next edge development was actually put in place. Well, there's two buildings out there. At the time, I'm a IT guy. I work in data processing. I thought, oh, maybe we'll get some research and development facilities and I could just walk to work. That didn't happen. Currently, there's two buildings out there. One of them is empty. The other houses our county educational resource center. And I'm not sure how that's in research and development, except for maybe to help develop young minds in the education system. And I commend our county's educational system, our structure, our administrators, and our teachers and their support staff. I also worked for a school district for 20 years before I retired, but that's a different issue. But I'm not pro-growth. I'm just concerned about the size of the project, the impact that will have, and probably the amount of, well, I'm kind of curious if they have 1,300 people who have signed up in advance to buy one of these plots that they're planning on building. But that's 5 times bigger than the Bridgewater project. And I think that the size and the scope of this I just kind of wonder how that fits with the planned use that was agreed upon in 2008 and all the work they put into it at the time to come up with this map. And I'm not sure if that fell through the crack, or I'm not sure. I don't keep up with that stuff, but I attended some of the meetings back then, and I have a degree in GIS, Geographic Information Systems, and I'm partial in maps and databases, and I was impressed with the map they came up with. But I'm kind of wondering what happened to that plan, which essentially should have guided this process to determine what this land should be used for, and a constructive, paced way to do it, as opposed to just one great big bombshell that will have like a meteorite impact if this is approved as it is. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anyone else? I know.
I had one.
I'm going to let you do. I just want to make sure there's nobody else out there who wants to talk. No one else out there, okay? Mr. Estrop.
Thank you, Mayor. For the record, our commitment to downtown and infill in this city stands. You can get a 100% abatement for 15 years of all real estate taxes if you build new in any property in the city of Springfield, south essentially of Mitchell, McCrite, and Buck Creek. That includes downtown Springfield. That's why over at the townhouses, you see advertised, it says no real estate taxes for 15 years, because those are new building. So anything south, essentially, of Mitchell, McCrite, and Buck Creek, you get 100% abatement of your real estate taxes for 15 years if you build new, and 10 years if you buy and substantially remodel. That's a commitment to downtown. That's a commitment to infill in this community. In addition, we have also implemented mow to own. So if there is a vacant lot within 1,000 feet of your home and you want to take care of it for $150, which is the title transfer fee, you can take over that lot as long as you take care of it. It's called mow to own. And a lot of people are using it for gardens and for recreation. In addition, we have just finished a study that you will be hearing about shortly that focuses on the southwest side of the city called the Engaged Neighborhood. we have invested a lot of time in trying to find what we can do to improve the southwest side of the city and use that as a template to improve other parts of the city. So to say that we are neglecting downtown or we're neglecting infill is simply not true. In fact, you get a sweeter deal if you move downtown or into the city in the infill than you do if you live in the township. I just wanted to get that straight for the record because there was an indication that we somehow were abandoning downtown. It is still the heart of this city, and we still need to continue to work to improve it and expand and strengthen the heart of the city, and we commit to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Annexation has never been an easy process, and I've sat here for quite some time, and that is how city came to being. But the big thing is, if we're going to attract employers that creates jobs, if the big thing that they were yelling about the entire time is there was no new construction, and all this new construction has just now begun over the last 5 years because we have an interest from other outside entities that want to come here. We do not, as a city, solicit anyone to annex to the city of Springfield. That's not my job. My job is to see if it's a fair situation, to see that it's going to benefit not only the city, but in the long run, I happen to agree with Dr. Estrop. It will benefit the township, the schools. The money will be generated to build more. And if it wasn't, you wouldn't have been able to build the school that's out there now. The property taxes do fall on that. And I also feel that the same people that are screaming about this, and you didn't scream, that are complaining about this evening, should still visit your legislature and ask them why in the hell they haven't straightened out the school funding mechanism. Because they haven't done that. So again, I'm voting on an annexation issue because that's how the city of Springfield is going to grow, and that's how the county is going to continue to grow. And Springfield is not isolated. That's what happens. Again, I think we'll come through this like we have come through everything else. I think it's sad that we have to not embrace the good and complain about what might not be good. Because I think this, all in all, is going to be good. Progress is good. That's all I wanted to say.
I'd like to make an empathetic comment because I think this would be extremely difficult.
It is.
Extremely difficult to even hear. There's nothing I don't think any one of us is going to say that anybody's going to applaud for. So that's not the goal. But I just think it's extremely difficult for you guys to be able to accept this. And I don't really think we're asking you to accept the fact that a private property owner has asked to annex this property into the city. We're not out for a cash grab because this is actually costing us services. We have to build fire stations that are going to be closer to properties that aren't even developed right now. But we're looking at $18 million worth of firehouses to be able to position ourselves to serve these areas. This is not, just a minute, please. This is not something that is like, oh, great, Springfield's going to get tons of money and everybody else is not going to benefit. It's just not true. We are actually going to have to increase our services. We have to look at manpower. We have to look at staffing. This is not just like, oh, great, we're growing. And again, we're not a city looking to, I agree with Kevin. Everything he said is true as far as like, we're not like getting, hey, developers come in and look, we've got property available. Developers are coming to Springfield and asking about the annexation process and where they can develop. That's really what's going on. And if I was a property owner out there on Titus Road, I would be equally as concerned because I would have moved out there for the similar reasons. So I'm empathizing. I live in the city, but we're not out to gobble up your peace. It's really not true. You may be told by other government leaders that that's what the city's doing, that's what these commissioners are doing, but we're not out to take away your peace. Growth is painful and it sucks for a lot of people, but it happens to be what's happening in Springfield. but we're not out seeking it and finding it to cause you a bunch of disruption. I think your schools will ultimately benefit, but I think it's going to look messy in the middle. And I'm sorry. I mean, I really am. It's going to be difficult. But we're going to answer an annexation issue tonight. We're going to answer that question. We're going to vote on annexing that property, which a property owner has every right, just like you and your individual rights. If you wanted to sit here and ask for annexation for your property for water services, sewer services, we'd have to answer that. Unless you want to be told what to do with your own private property, which I doubt anybody in here would want to be told how to govern their own private property. Okay? So we're just answering the annexation issue tonight. Just want to be clear about that. And I hear your concerns, and I am sorry it's going to be difficult for you. If you want to speak, I know that you need to ask and go to the mic and say your name again. Just, we keep protocol, okay? Is that all right, Mayor?
Yes.
Katie Ryan Schilke.
Thank you.
I just had a specific question about not the taxes, the voting. So if this gets annexed and then gets developed, I believe that the residents will be like dual citizens of the township and the city. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I understand that the city will be responsible for fire, EMS, and police of the area?
Correct.
Okay. Then do those residents get to vote for our township fire and EMS levies that we are voting on, since they don't actually get those services?
They vote on those township issues, yes.
You're
Okay.
still a township resident.
Do you think that it causes an issue to have people voting for things that they aren't affected by? I understand that like there are other areas in the township that they live in and like that are serviced, but like their homes aren't directly serviced by like township fire and EMS. Are you concerned about how their voting will affect our ability to pass levies for our own fire and EMS?
I don't know that. I'm sorry.
I don't-
I'd like that to be explained to me.
Yeah,
I don't think that that's true. Once it's in the city limits of Springfield and becomes, they vote on city.
They will
Vote
vote
on
on
city
both.
issues, but they also retain that township.
get-
That's how
that's right.
annexation works.
They'll get to vote for
And
you guys and they'll get to vote for our township trustees.
I believe that is correct, Jill.
Yeah, it's just interesting because like you guys get to vote on something that affects all of our lives, but we don't get to vote for you. But then anyone who moves into these new developments is going to get to vote for all of you guys and get to vote for our township trustees. I mean, it seems like a sweet deal. Maybe I should buy a house.
Do you know how much we make a year? I don't know about
Just
sweet
kidding, I
deal.
won't.
Wherever the houses are going, it will be in the city of Springfield, and they will be able to vote for issues in the city of Springfield.
Right, but they will
Okay, but
also,
you said that they weren't able to do that.
no, I'm saying I'm not able to
Okay.
do that.
Yeah, but
I'm not able
you
to
should
do
move
that.
the place.
My concern is that they will also be able to vote on township issues and services that they don't actually benefit from. So I'm worried that it will affect our ability to pass our fire and EMS levies.
To add to the confusion, there are city schools in the township. Township residents vote for city school board members. There are parts of the city that are not in the city school district. They're in Clark-Shawnee School District. People who live in the Clark-Shawnee district or live in the city, but children who go to the Clark-Shawnee School District vote for Clark-Shawnee Board of Education. The boundaries of schools and some services are not all coterminous. They're not all the same. There are portions of the city that fall outside the Springfield City School District. There are parts of the surrounding school districts that fall in the city. We have pockets where people live in the city school district but don't live in the city. It's a
Okay.
mess.
I
And
wasn't talking about
my
this. I wasn't
compliments-
talking about the school districts though.
My compliments to the city election officials who have to figure all of this out. Jill, can you offer us some guidance on this?
Just to some extent, but we're also looking at the CETA agreement. So a lot of times with the revised code, when you have an annexation, you're required to detach from the township, but there is a contractual agreement with the township and the city a number of years ago that created that dual citizenship you're talking about.
Again,
Okay, so,
I don't think we're going to say anything that's going to sound awesome to you, and I don't think we're probably going to answer your question complete. We didn't draw the lines
yeah,
for all this
because
stuff.
I don't think you've thought about it, but, all right, thank you.
Because what, ma'am?
Oh, I just don't think that had been thought about, like, how they're gonna have dual citizenships and be able to vote for, like, our fire and EMS when they don't even receive our fire and EMS, like, I mean,
We didn't create those rules, those voting rules, but
no, I'm not saying
that doesn't
you did
preclude us the
create them
fact that
or
we're going to still
have,
be
like,
providing
the ability to
services.
change them.
The city will still be providing services, whether you get to vote for 2 fire departments or not. We're still going to be providing services into that area.
I know.
Well-
I'm just concerned about our ability to, like, I'm worried that, like, why would those residents want to vote? Why would they want to vote for our fire and EMS when they don't even get our fire and EMS services like they get the cities, you know? So I'm just concerned about, like, beyond the school districts, like, also how that affects our fire and EMS and our ability to get the funding that we need in the future. And I was just wondering if you guys could offer any explanation on that, but it's something to take into account.
Thank you.
Casey Lee with 363 Titus Road. I just had one question for the commission, and maybe this is more for Brian. Brian, could you please explain in layman's terms the CETA agreement that you have with Springfield Township? And I did have a question in regards to the property that is being annexed, or and it's being up for annex. At one time, that property was all annexed or zoned as agricultural. Is that correct?
I believe a good portion of it is.
Okay, then once CIC took over that land and it was annexed into the city, is that correct? I mean,
The
or-
Next Edge Park,
Yeah, it was not annexed in the city, but I mean, but then when
Yeah.
the chamber bought that property,
well, that was
It's-
already, so Next Edge existed before the CIC chamber actually
Okay, but
purchased the
then-
property. They are the owner now of that, the
okay, but is it
CIC.
still zoned agricultural?
No, Next Edge is zoned RDP, which is Research and Development Park.
Okay, but what about the field part, the fields and stuff?
The fields behind, I believe, are zoned ag,
So they're still zoned ag.
the farm fields.
So a question is so if you guys annex that into the city now, that's going to change. You can't change the zoning of an agricultural zone to a residential zone, right? It has to go through the zoning commission, correct?
Yeah, it's already gone through the CETA Regional Planning Commission.
Okay.
Who sits on the CETA board, Brian?
The CETA board is comprised of 2 members of the city planning board, 2 Springfield Township appointments, 2 county appointments, and then the 6 members select a chair.
So that hasn't been
That
voted
was
on.
approved, do you remember what meeting? March? Early March, it was approved at the CETA meeting, and then it will come to city commission for ultimate decision.
Has to be approved at that level before it even comes.
So it has gone through the CETA Regional Planning Commission to rezone that property to a PD zoning, which is a planned development zoning classification.
So, but just in a layman's term, can you kind of explain a little bit about the CETA agreement that we have that Springfield Township has with the city?
Yeah, so CETA was adopted in the late 90s as a way of collaboration, as it says, Cooperative Economic Development Agreement, to have a partnership between the county, the city, and the township on how to develop and grow our community. And it was put in place, honestly, before annexation laws were changed at the state level, that did not address the issue of properties that would always be detached from the township, where they would lose all their taxes if it was annexed into a city jurisdiction. The state changed those laws in the early 2000s, which allowed for the process to move forward where it creates the dual citizenship, or the dual process where it retains township. So the township continues to collect the same property taxes that they always had, but it also incorporates into the city and can receive the services of the city. The CETA agreement lays out an agreement between the city and township specifically on maintenance, but it also lays out that the city on all commercial developments, the township receives 12.5% of the city's collected income tax. And so the township is compensated for the CETA agreement. To the tune right now, it generates about $500,000 a year, which is, and to put it in perspective, is about half of our street maintenance budget for the entire city is given to the township or generated for the township to be able to provide those services, the snow removal, the
Brush removal.
those
street
types
repair.
of things. So the township is compensated for that, those services that are provided and agreed to upon that agreement. And so, and then the CETA, the biggest thing the CETA was really around is addressing utilities and utility connections. So residential properties that were built and constructed before CETA was in existence do not have a requirement. They have the right or the access to our utilities, but they do not have to annex. So I don't know when the home was built on Titus that you currently reside in. If it was built before the CETA agreement was in place, you will, if utilities are available and you need to connect to utilities, you will have that right under the CETA agreement, but you do not have to annex into the city. So when you talked earlier about the city's just going to keep coming and coming and coming, the CETA arranges so that doesn't happen. And it protects those existing properties that were already built and developed before CETA was put into place. So
You wrap
that's
this up. This-
layman's terms of
Yeah.
CETA agreement. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
It does. Thank you.
So my job is to try to keep the meeting moving, and that's turning out to be pretty hard tonight. But we'll see where we go. Is there anyone else who wants to speak, who hasn't already? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, by repealing and replacing existing section 1211.02 titled Standards.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one 2023 HV 507 SVFA truck for the amount not to exceed $82,837.95 from Rush Truck Centers through the Ohio Department of Transportation Cooperative Purchasing Program in accordance with provisions of Section 5513.01B of the Ohio Revised Code.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Yes. I was wondering, is this a truck that has been manufactured locally?
yes, this would come from the international plant that is up on 68.
Good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Amending ordinance number 9190 passed March 12, 1991, and commonly known as the codified ordinances of the city of Springfield, Ohio, by the amendment of certain sections of chapter 916 titled Use of Public Sewers.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
I was wondering if Chris might outline exactly what the changes are.
Excuse me, Commissioner, they're actually very boring. It is a couple minor changes that we need to do to make sure that our ordinances are in line with the state and federal regulations. They were reviewed by our engineers and our legal team, and no one had any concerns.
Okay, so this just brings us in line with state law.
Yes, and in most cases, it brings us the language in line to the practices we've had in place.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Dr. Estra,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
Confirming and approving a development incentive agreement, single-family residential development with James M. Davis and Paula S. Davis to provide for sewer services to real property outside the city limits.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing participation in the ODOT winter contract for road salt.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an LPA agreement number 35221, amendment number 4, between the city and the Ohio Department of Transportation in connection with the State Route 72 project, PID number 113792, to provide clarity regarding the funding source.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into agreement with Marker Incorporated for preliminary and pre-construction services for the new fire station to be located on South Limestone Street for an amount not to exceed $24,480.
Moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? We look forward to that fire station near our home. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Declaring it necessary to require the construction or reconstruction of curbs, gutters, and sidewalks at the points identified as section number 1 streets and section number 2 of streets of the 2022 sidewalk curb and gutter program.
Move to adopt.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Yes?
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
The next item was pulled for the agenda, item number 11122. In support of the Mad River Valley Buried Aquifer and Great Miami River Watershed and establishing the Miami Valley Water Compact, and declaring an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Estrop?
Thank you, Mayor Copeland. At our last meeting, I was pleased to inform you of a communication we've received from Waste Management relative to the Fremont City barrel fill. In that communication, Mr. Forney, on behalf of Waste Management, acknowledged that, in fact, an agreement on a consent decree among the 7 principal responsible parties, the U.S. EPA and the U.S. Justice Department, had been reached, and that he expected all signatures to be collected on or before April the 6th. I think it was President Ronald Reagan who said, "Trust, but verify." We tried to verify on April 7th that all the signatures had been gathered. Unfortunately, I have to inform you that we were not able to verify that. The Environmental Protection Agency nor the Department of Justice will tell us anything. And Mr. Forney of Waste Management says he does not know the other 6 parties have in fact signed off on it. We have a public meeting at 6 o'clock tomorrow night at Springfield High School, where we will bring the community up to date to that minute in terms of where things stand. One of the things that we've learned in this process, though, is that our water supply is precious. And it's something that is interconnected among all of us, be you rural, suburban, or urban. And it's something that is shared by people in Champaign County, Clark County, Montgomery County. And that our focus, by looking at it just as a Springfield problem or even a Clark County problem, is too small. and we should be looking at this as a regional issue. This is a problem for the greater Miami Valley, not just one community. So this tonight creates a compact, a regional compact, that in fact says we will cooperate and work with each other to protect this precious resource. And we will keep each other informed in terms of what is going on with things like the toxic barrel fill at Tremont City. This is an important first step because I've also become convinced that our voice alone is not enough to get this done. We need to speak as a region. We need to have more voices joining with us so that, in fact, the people in Washington and Chicago will listen to us and get this done. This has now been going on for 40 years. People in this area have been raising this issue, and nothing has yet been done. So I strongly recommend to my colleagues on the City Commission that we approve this tonight and take a leadership role of establishing this compact for our region to protect the very precious resource that we have of good, clean, safe water. Thank you very much.
I agree with everything you said and quite happy to take that stand. Anyone else want to speak to this matter? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Providing for supplemental appropriations within various funds and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Confirming purchases and the obtaining of services for the city and providing for payment therefore and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the city manager to enter into an amendment to the contract with the Ohio Bell Telephone Company doing business as AT&T Ohio for a one-year extension in connection with certain telephone services for municipal purposes for an amount not to exceed $80,000 and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one 2022 Ford F-450 4x2 chassis with snow ice equipment from Valley Truck Centers for an amount not to exceed $99,687 through the Ohio Department of Administrative Services pursuant to Ohio's Cooperative Purchasing Act in accordance with the provisions of Section 125.04 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second. Been moved and seconded.
I assume that this truck and the truck we are purchasing in the next item, that the models we were looking for were not available from International.
That is correct. And just to clarify on this too, Commissioners, this is to get us in line. We hope to take receipt of these vehicles by 2024, I believe. So
Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Dr. Estrom?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Authorizing the purchase of one 2022 Ford F-550 4x2 chassis with specified equipment from Valley Truck Centers for an amount not to exceed $135,959 through the Ohio Department of Administrative Services pursuant to Ohio's Cooperative Purchasing Act in accordance with the provisions of Section 125.04 of the Ohio Revised Code and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
The next two items were pulled from the agenda, items 11522 and 11622. Authorizing the city manager to enter into a general professional engineering services agreement with Carpenter Marty Transportation Incorporated for professional engineering services to be used by various city departments for an amount not to exceed $1 million for a period of 3 years with the option to renew for 2 additional 1-year periods and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue, Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming and approving change order number 2 to the contract between the city and CNN Contractors Incorporated for the police locker room upgrade project to extend the contract completion date to March 31st, 2022, and authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 2 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Is this a late ordinance or the date?
Yeah, this just changes the date and adjusts it to meet the contract period so we can finalize and pay out the vendor.
Else? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing city manager to enter into a contract with Shelley Company for the 2022 PI paving project for an amount not to exceed $2,824,293.15 and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming and approving change order number 4 to the contract between the city and Howell Contractors Incorporated for the Eastern Pressure District Waterline Upgrades Project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $396,902.40 for a total amount not to exceed $8,495,750.84 and to extend the contract completion date to November 18, 2022, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 4 and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
confirming and approving change order number 1 to the contract between the city and Graybar Electric Company Incorporated for the City Hall Lighting Upgrades Project to increase the contract in an amount not to exceed $15,314.67 for a total amount not to exceed $153,557.43 pursuant to the Omnia Partners Contract Purchasing Cooperative Program in accordance with the provisions of Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code, authorizing the city manager to execute said change order number 1 and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland,
Yes.
authorizing the city manager to enter into amendment number 4 to the Springfield Comprehensive Housing Strategic Planning and Policy Development Consultant Agreement with Greater Ohio Policy Center Incorporated to extend the contract completion date to June 3rd, 2022, confirming and approving related expenditures incurred from April 1, 2022 to the passage of this ordinance and declaring it an emergency therein.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips,
Yes.
Dr. Estrop,
Yes.
Mr. Rue,
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill,
Yes.
Mr. Copeland.
Yes.
The next 3 items have been added to the agenda. Appointing Vernon Donnelly to the Springfield Historic Landmark Commission and declaring it an emergency therein.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
A resolution approving the petition for the creation of an energy special improvement district and for special assessment for special energy improvement project and declaring it an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Questions or comments from the commission?
Can you give us an example of what this might involve, Brian?
Yeah, so state legislation sets up the ability to create what's called energy special improvement districts, or ESIDs. These ESIDs allow for assessments to be made to a project relative to utilizing most likely a rehabilitation of an existing building that has significant energy efficient upgrades that need to be made to HVAC systems, windows, lighting, you name it, that falls in that energy category. And then it's a financing mechanism that allows those improvements to be assessed and spread out over a period of time. And so they would be paid out through the property tax mechanism, but it would be an assessment for those specific improvements. So there would be a dollar value generated on the eligible improvements or the eligible items that qualified under that energy. And then that assessment would be spread out over a 25-year period. And so again, it's a financing mechanism for energy-related projects. We were real close to bringing one several years ago for Emmanuel Christian that was looking at some HVAC upgrades and equipment. And so they looked at and analyzed whether an ESID would make sense to them. Ultimately, it did not, so that did not move forward. This is specifically relative right now to the WREN project, that is the downtown residential rehabilitation of the former WREN building, or some would know it as the McAdams building. And so this would, again, be a financing mechanism as it relates to that overall project that allows them to assess the energy-related improvements over that longer period of time as a financing means to get the project, to make the project work.
That should be another incentive to redevelopment in our downtown area.
Yeah, specifically for this project, but ESIDs could exist across the entire community. So energy-related projects are eligible. You know, a developer or building owner would just need to look and, again, analyze whether that ESID approach and that financing mechanism makes sense as they look at the overall capital stack of their project.
Thank you.
Brian, what entity, just one more question, on a project like that, what entity would identify that, the need for that?
So the ESID actually creates a board that would look at the eligible expenses that qualify under that ESID and evaluate it as part of that assessment.
In the audience? Clerk, call the roll.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
A resolution declaring the necessity of acquiring, constructing, and improving certain public improvements at 21 to 37 East High Street in the city of Springfield, Ohio, in cooperation with the Springfield Regional Energy Special Improvement District and declaring it an emergency.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded. Questions or comments from the commission? From the audience? Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estra?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. That concludes our agenda. Are there other items to come before us from commissioners? Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak to us? Name and address for the record, please.
Larry Ricketts, 1736 North Fountain Boulevard. I'd like to address these comments to the commissioners, but also to the developers of the project that's going to go on out east of town. You have a very unique opportunity here. You're going to be putting up a lot of houses. I want to urge you very, very strongly to look at adding solar as either an additional cost to the buyer or however you need to do it. you have the opportunity. We have solar on our house. I'd like to show you my $4.50 electric bill for last month. And I'd also like to let you know that in the 6 years that we have had solar on our house, we have produced 26,000 kilowatts of electricity from our one house, just with 16 panels on it. We have avoided putting 17.3 tons of CO2 into the air with that one system. That is the equivalent of planting 1,386 trees.
Which wouldn't fit on your lot.
Yeah, it wouldn't fit in the lot. But you do have an opportunity because you're not going to have a lot of mature trees out there. And looking at solar and the development process is the way to go instead of waiting later when there has to be other types of things done that are more costly. If you can put it into the cost while you're developing it and while you're building it, the costs go down substantially. So take this opportunity and seriously take a look at that. Thank you very much.
Larry, while you're standing there, since you've already done it, you and I talked about this the other night. Are there grants still available through the federal government to get these projects going?
You still get a 25% rebate on your federal taxes by putting a system on your existing structure. I believe there are different ways that developers can do this where they can actually recover those costs if they do that in the initial phase of the building. So your cost for actually putting something like that in go down. So yes. So yes, they're still available. Unfortunately, there's nothing at the state, but there is still at the federal level.
Thank you.
Name and address for the record.
Yes. Hello, my name's Aaron Horn. I'm with Dillon LLC. Our office is located at 155 Central Avenue, Springboro, Ohio. I just wanted to say to the commission, thank you tonight for considering the ESED board, the creation of the ESED board. We are partners with the Turner Foundation on the development of the Wren Lofts project, which you see up there today. PACE financing really gives us access to long-term, low-interest, fixed-rate funding, which is really needed. As you can see, the building has a lot of energy improvements that can be made. So we're really looking forward to putting PACE to use on this project. And I can't commend Brian and Tom Franzen enough on the work they've done to date on helping us get to this point, as well as the Turner Foundation, Darren Cotter, John Landis, and also the Chamber support, Orton and Mike, for all the support they've given us. So thank you for making the consideration today, and look forward to continuing to move the project forward.
We look forward to it happening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone like to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
2 seconds.
Yes. That's funny.
It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. O'Neill?
Yes.
Dr. Estrop?
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mr. Rue?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Meeting's adjourned.
That was the foretaste of the spice. When they come back,